we're almost towards the half of the month. And can you believe that? Time flies so fast po, ano? And dito sa event natin ngayon, we would look back at the first quarter of 2020, wherein almost everything was put to a halt as the COVID pandemic spread all over the world. In a snap, a lot of things became uncertain. Everyone's daily routine suddenly got derailed. Even businesses closed down and government operations were shut down. And worst, the economy plummeted. According to a socio-economic planner, the cost of COVID-19 impact on the Philippine economy this year will reach 2.2 trillion pesos in losses. This is due to the firm going out of business and increasing unemployment rate. And with this gloomy pandemic situation hovering over us, is there still silver lining in the COVID-19 cloud? And what opportunities await us after this pandemic? This is what we will be discussing in today's 65th E-General Membership Meeting of the Pampanga Chamber of Commerce and Industry Incorporated. To start with, may I ask everyone to join in giving thanks and praise through the invocation to be followed by the singing of the national anthem and the hymn ng Kapampangan.
This day, for the presence of everyone in this call, for once again, we are gathered and given the opportunity to appreciate life and your words. Forgive us for our shortcomings and cleanse our hearts as we learn and live your words and example. Father, bless our endeavors, especially today's meeting. May you guide us in our discussions, and may you enlighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace that we may effectively do our parts for your greater glory. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, telas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit ang pagaw, ay tinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang lang matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iibig, makituwin at araw niya kailan pamay di mag-iibig. Luman ang araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya ng pagkay mga api, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Kapampangan misakwak, kinglegwan naning alaya, Gabunding pantas at marangal, sibul ning lugod, karinaning tepangan, batis ning katalaruan, at panamdam makabalen, ligaya mi inye payapa, king malugod mong kandungan. Kapampangan sa lening leguan, kapampangan sandalaning katimawan, kilubing pusumi, atin kang dambana, luid ka, palsintan ming kapampangan. Luid ka, palsintan ming kapampangan. Kapampangan sa lening leguan, kapampangan sandalaning katimawan, hilugding pusumi, atin kang dambana. Luid ka, palsintan ming kapampangan. Luid ka, palsintan ming kapampangan.
Thank you so much, and you may now sit in the comforts of your own office, your home, or wherever you may be right now, and let us give you a positively informative and enlightening EGMM today. Before we proceed, I would like to inform everyone that concurrently, the election of the new sets of Board of Directors is ongoing. E-voting started at 1 p.m. today and will be closing at exactly 3 p.m. So for our PAMCHAM members who haven't casted their votes yet, please do so before 3 p.m. because from then it will be closed and we will proceed with the tabulation and the validation of the results. Okay, and for those just joining us now, welcome to PAMCHAM's 65th EGMM with the theme Silver Linings in the COVID-19 Cloud. Okay, before we proceed also, may I also acknowledge first our participants who took time to be with us today. We would like to acknowledge the presence or the participation of the Area Vice President Gigi Simbulan from PCCI North Luzon. We also have former Area Vice President Alfonso Lau from PCCI North Luzon also. Regional Governor Alvin Bellarmino, PCCI Region 3. Regional Governor Tom Panis, PCCI Cordillera Administrative Region or CAR. Regional Governor Cloyd Velasco from PCCI Region 2, President Rufina Pines Marin from the Metro Dagupan City Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We also have President Attorney Zosimo M. Abratique from PCCI Baguio Benguet Chapter Incorporated. We also have participants from the national agencies. From the other agencies, we have Regional Director Julius Cesar Sicat from the Department of Science and Technology Region 3. We have Provincial Director Elenita Ordoño from the Department of Trade and Industry here in Pampanga, and Provincial Director Brigida Pili from the Department of Trade and Industry, Nueva Ecija. We also have Vice Mayor Jaime Lasatin from the City of San Fernando, and some of the guests from the Clark Development Corporation, Ms. Charisse Marie Lacson and Rodem Perez. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar this afternoon. Also, I would like to acknowledge the corporate partners of PAMCHAM who made this event possible. We would like to acknowledge Nidal Management Incorporated, Romac Group of Companies, Bank of Florida, Lupo S. Ramos and Company, Holy Angel University, Central Luzon College of Science and Technology, Forerunner Services Incorporated, Federal Express Pacific LLC or FedEx, First Mega Saver, Infini Creations Multimedia Production or IMTV, G Partners and Creatives Business Process Outsourcing, Hino Pampanga Incorporated, Subic Bay International Terminal Corporation, Converge Enterprise, NLEX, SCTEX Metro Pacific Tollways, BMware Software Development, and also our event sponsor, Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation. And also note, huwag po kayong bibitaw kasi later on, para sa mga participants natin, meron tayong raffle na ipinamimigay. Alam niyo naman ang PAMCHAM, they always make sure that we get something in return for what we are providing them and when we are joining their events. All right. Also, later on, we will be giving you updates on the status of the voting, even if it's not yet closing, but we will be giving you updates on that. And now, to formally welcome everyone to PAMCHAM's 65th EGMM, let us hear it from our passionate and energetic President and the Chairman and CEO of Romac Group of Companies, President Rene G. Romero.
Good afternoon, my dear PAMCHAM members and fellow directors. The bear months have come, and normally we would be exuberant over the coming Christmas season, the longest and most anticipated holiday in the Philippines. Normally, we would be expecting surges in consumer demand for our products and services. And from there, we start planning production schedules for the coming 3 months before Christmas. Likewise, normally, we would start booking personal trips with our families and friends, and most likely overseas. And also normally, we would have several Christmas parties and reunions to plan in the months ahead. But we are no longer living and doing business in normal times. The pandemic has caused such severe disruption in our lives and businesses that it becomes impossible to plan for longer than 2 weeks or 15 days at a time. Our lives and business plans are now ruled or overruled, as the case may be, by the biweekly pronouncements of the national, regional, local IATFs. The new normal, as we now call it, keeps us in a continuing state of limbo. And until a preventive vaccine, or at the very least, an effective prevention protocol is put in place by our government, and more importantly, adhered to by all Filipinos, long-term, medium-term sales forecast, demand projections, and overseas vacations will be a waste of time and resources. But even with everything still tentative, we must make plans for our eventual recovery, because I am positive that we will recover. As a nation, this is by no means our first crisis, nor will it be the last. But one thing is certain, as in many of our past crises, Filipinos' natural resiliency and innate adaptability to every and all kinds of situation will be our salvation. Together, as one people and as one nation, we will come out of this pandemic better, stronger, and hopefully united. For PAMCHAM, we will continue doing what we do best. We will continue to push forward advocacies that will promote and protect the interests and welfare of the business community. We will also hold regular activities that will provide relevant information, bolster confidence, and motivate our members to rebuild, restart, and if necessary, reinvent their businesses to adapt to the new normal post-COVID-19. After today's activity, in November, we will hold another kapihan. Our membership committee are on top of this, and they will be announcing the topic and speaker in the coming weeks. So please watch out for that. We are also planning another general membership meeting in November, and possibly or hopefully a virtual or e-Christmas party in December. How? At this time, I don't know yet because the pandemic situation is still very volatile. If you have ideas on how we can pull this off, please let us know. Your suggestions are most welcome. Thank you, and please keep patronizing and promoting our local products and services. This is our salvation as a nation. Let us buy Pinoy, buy Kapampangan, save jobs. I am Pam Cham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Definitely, we have to rebuild, restart, reinvent, and adapt to the new normal. For PamCham will continue to push forward with its advocacies. Remember, I am PamCham. And just to give you an update po, as of 2:45, for our voters, 32% of our members have already casted their votes. So we are encouraging every member and member of the chamber to please do vote until 3 p.m. So your vote is very important. All right, moving on. Let us now listen to the message of our advocacy-driven chairman, the president of NIDL Group of Companies, Chairman Jess S. Nicdao.
Mr. Founder and Speaker, Mr. David Leechiu, PamCham President Rene Romero, PamCham's members of the board, our partners in the different government agencies and corporations, fellow members of PamCham, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. We are now 6 months into the pandemic and counting, and with half a year of restricted mobility and disrupted businesses, it feels like the months of January and February are a lifetime ago. The timeline is now BC, DC, and AC. Before COVID, during COVID, and hopefully after COVID. Doing business had to shift accordingly to this timeline as well. Before COVID, it was business as usual. During COVID, where we are now, it is business in the new normal. After COVID, it will be business in the next normal. The narrative is now more about the pandemic's cost to lives and livelihood, and less about which country has the most number of virus infections worldwide. Further, the imperative at hand, especially for government, is striking a workable balance between the two, saving lives and saving our livelihood. BC, before COVID, these two were directly correlated and follows the same trajectory because income from business and employment correlatively feeds families and sustains lives. DC, during COVID, saving lives meant business closures, staying at home, and social distancing. Containing the infection required strict quarantine imposition by our government. An unfortunate consequence we now know is the collapse of the economy. AC, after COVID, which we hope will be soon, we envision a drastic paradigm shift in economic development perspective, both local and global. The old adage, health is wealth and wealth is health, will take a deeper and more fundamental meaning for everyone. Healthcare will take a prominent role in government's priorities as well as in business. The way we do business is forever changed, and depending on how we implement work-life balance policies in our companies. We expect employers to be more responsible for the well-being of their employees. We also hope that employees in turn will value their work and health more. PamCham's role had also transitioned with the COVID timelines. BC, before COVID, our advocacies and activities were focused on supporting and bolstering the seemingly unimpeded upward growth trajectory of the province and the region. DC, during COVID, we had to take a step back, make an assessment of the economic impact of the pandemic on countryside business. We reached out to our local and national government, and working with our mother chamber, the PCCI, we continually echoed the sentiments and positions of business to government to help us navigate through this crisis. AC, after COVID, we will intensify advocacies and activities aimed at getting business back on its feet again. This is a very tall order for our organization, but if you will recall, PAMCHAM's reorganization as a provincial chamber in September 2003, 17 years ago, came at the heels of a calamitous crisis. PAMCHAM is certainly no stranger to difficult situations. For 17 years, PAMCHAM had been at the forefront of Pampanga's economic resurgence. From being submerged under tons of volcanic debris or lahar, PAMCHAM endeavored to prime countryside business by promoting local homegrown businesses to investors and partnered with our local government leaders to make Pampanga a viable investment destination north of Metro Manila. The crisis we now face may have taken another form, and its effect is global. But PAMCHAM, with the strong support of the members, will help lead the local business community rise above this adversity. Let me now bring your attention to our activity today. This will be our 65th general membership meeting and concurrently our 7th election of the board of directors. I trust that by this time, most of you have already cast your votes, and later, before the end of our GMM, we will know the 15 top-ranked candidates who will sit as directors for the term January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2022. At this point, let me acknowledge and express our collective gratitude and appreciation to the esteemed members of the 2020 COMELEC of PAMCHAM, chaired by Mr. Romy Torno of RG Torno and Company, CPAs, co-chaired by Ms. Loy Echevarria of PIMA, ably supported by Dr. Lourdes Javier of San Lorenzo Ruiz Center of Studies and School, and Mr. Patrick Guanzon of GG&G Distributors Incorporated. Thank you for finding ways to innovate and adopt our election in the new normal. Your diligence and dedication to serve the general membership is sincerely appreciated. To our dear members who, despite the difficult times, continue to extend moral and financial support to PAMCHAM, please know our deepest gratitude. Let me echo our President's calls to action. Together, we will overcome the crises. Hashtag Buy Pinoy, hashtag Buy Kapampangan, hashtag Save Lives, hashtag I am PAMCHAM. Thank you at maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. Our timeline now is BC, DC, and AC, which means before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. This is very timely for today's EGMM, as there will always be a silver lining in the COVID cloud. As what our chairman just said, PAMCHAM is certainly no stranger to difficult times, and rest assured, the chamber, together with its members, will always stay resilient. All right. It is very important to know what lies ahead for the business industry and also the economy in general, because not only does it help people decide on what to do next, but also for the government to be able to make or strategic plans in order for us to survive this pandemic. It is not a simple situation or a crisis that is only happening in one specific country, in one specific region of the world, but the entire world was really affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. And what is there to learn but the lessons that we need to be more resilient in everything that we do, especially if a crisis like this happen, an unprecedented one. So at this point, may I also remind you again, the members of the PAMCHAM chamber, to cast your votes, because you only have, as of now, 3 minutes to cast your votes for the election of the new sets of Board of Directors. There will be 15 Board of Directors. And as of now, I would like to acknowledge the current Board of Directors that we have for PAMCHAM for the year 2019-2020. We have our chairman, Mr. Jesnick Dao, from Nidal Management Company. We also have from the Asia Pacific Academy, Vice Chairman Jim B. Jimenez, ROMAC Group of Companies, President Rene G. Romero, Central Country Estate Incorporated, Vice President Architect Nestor S. Mangyo. We also have from MB Garbes Realty Incorporated, Corporate Secretary Malubi Garbes. From Bank of Florida, Corporate Treasurer Terry D. Carlos, and Patient Care Corporation's representative, who is also the auditor, Mr. Bong Dima. For the members of the board, we have from Forerunner Services Incorporated, Director Gil Jose Pamandanan. We have from Holy Angel University, Director Dr. Luis Maria R. Calingo. From Hyundai Pampanga, Director Marco O. Hizon. And from Lupo S. Ramos and Company, we have Director Marilu Ramos Tolentino. From the Laos Group of Companies, Director Dior A. Laos. From RDF Feed, Livestock and Foods Incorporated, Director Dr. Robert H. Law. And from AA Construction, we have Director Engineer Ruben A. C. And lastly, we have Houseland Development Corporation, represented by Director Willie M. Pan. So those are our 15 current Board of Directors for the year 2019-2020. So what we are doing right now is we are doing the e-voting or the e-election, diba? Every now and then we have to mention that it's e, because nowadays, siguro it's the new normal, no? Na lahat na lang we're doing it online, and it does not become it's not a hurdle for us para makapaggawa tayo ng mga or i-facilitate natin lahat ng mga kailangan natin, especially such an activity or an event as this election for the Board of Directors. Let me mention there are 15 Board of Directors, and those who will be elected as part of the 15 Board of Directors will be choosing among themselves who will be the next president and the next chairman of PAMCHAM. Okay, we will be right back. So stay tuned. Dito lang po sa webinar para sa PAMCHAM's EGMM, the 65th EGMM of PAMCHAM.
Florida, very, very happy.
This is Holy Angel University, considered as one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. HAU offers accessible quality education that transforms students into persons of conscience, competence, and compassion. With its full range of academic programs and services, HAU has been producing achievers, leaders, trailblazers, and more for over 85 years. Holy Angel University, Laus Deo Semper.
Florida, very, very happy.
This is Holy Angel University, considered as one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. HAU offers accessible quality education that transforms students into persons of conscience, competence, and compassion. With its full range of academic programs and services, HAU has been producing achievers, leaders, trailblazers, and more for over 85 years. Holy Angel University, Laus Deo Semper.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 65th General Membership Meeting and 7th BOD or Board of Directors e-election of PAMCHAM, which we have the theme for today as Silver Linings in the COVID-19 Cloud, Opportunities Post-COVID-19. All right, at this point, we will be serenaded by one of our favorite artists here in Central Luzon, the pride of CLTV 36 and the rest of the region. We have Mr. Hansley.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor to be here to give you beautiful songs this afternoon. I have loved you always in my mind, but I know that there will come a time you're feeling this feeling I have inside. I'm a hopeless romantic is what they say, falling in and out of love just like a play, memorizing each line. I didn't know what to say, what to say. Don't know what to do whenever you want me, don't know what to say. My heart is floating in tears. When you pass by, I could fly. Every minute, every second of the day, I dream of you in the most special way. You're beside me all the time. I have loved you and I always will. Call it crazy, but I know someday you'd feel this feeling I have for you inside. I'm a hopeless romantic, I know I am. Memorize all the lines, but here I am, struggling for words. I still don't know what to say, what to say. I don't know what to do whenever you are near. I don't know what to say. My heart is floating in tears. When you pass by, I could fly. Every minute, every second of the day, dream of you in the most special way. You'll be beside me all the time. All the time, all the time.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Hans. And later on, we will be seeing more or hearing more of Sir Hans later on as we proceed with the events, today's event. And just to let you know, the members of PAMCHAM, we have extended the voting from 3 p.m. We have decided to extend it until 3:30 p.m. So you still have 20 minutes to cast in your votes for the new set of board of directors. All right. At this juncture, it is time to meet our guest of honor and speaker. We have the Chief Executive Officer of the Laos Group of Companies, Ms. Lisette Laos Velasco, to do the honor. But before that, on behalf of the officers and members of PAMCHAM, we would like to congratulate Ms. LLV for being the newly installed President of Entrepreneurs Organization Philippines for the year 2020-2021. Congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon to the Pampanga Chamber of Commerce, headed by, of course, our chairman, Tito Jesnick Dao, and President Rene Romero, its directors, as well as the different organizations and chambers joining us this afternoon. Today is actually an honor for me to introduce this afternoon's guests, resource speaker, as he talks about what's next in the property sector. In fact, he is also being tapped internally by our organization called the Entrepreneurs Organization of the Philippines, where he is a member. And every time, he has been generous in sharing his knowledge. David is the CEO of Leechiu Properties Consultants. He has 25 years of experience in real estate and is considered the leading commercial and real estate broker in the Philippines. He has arranged the lease of more than 1 million square meters of office space and sold more than $2 billion in real estate. He was instrumental in leasing out at least 80% of Fort Bonifacio, or what we call today as BGC. As the co-founder and CEO of Leechiu and Associates in 2003, he elevated the status of the company as the country's top real estate brokerage. He graduated with a degree in business administration, major in entrepreneurial management at the University of Asia and the Pacific, and took his master's in management development program at the Asian Institute of Management in 2011. He currently is the board of trustees in the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, where he has been instrumental in steering the Next Wave Cities initiative since its inception in 2009. He is the recipient of the PLDT MVP Bossing Awards in 2018. And during this pandemic, he has gained the trust and respect of well-known business people in the country because of his consistency in providing an optimistic yet realistic perspective on the property sector. He's not just respected in the Philippines, but in his field in general. Yet, despite all the accolades he has received, he has remained humble and simple. Pampanga, we bring you Mr. David Leechiu.
Lizette, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. It's very, very flattered. Lizette, thank you. Pampanga Chamber, thank you very much for having me. What very few people know is that my mom comes from Angeles City and she went to Holy Angel University, graduated there. I've had very fond memories growing up. I used to go to Angeles and stay with my grandmother for a good 2 months every year. And so I know a little bit of Kapampangan. And so I've been asked to share with you our views about what's going on in the property market and the economy in general. And so I'd like to thank you in advance for your attention and for having me here. We are going to give a presentation of a number of slides, and you are free to receive a copy of this and distribute it to anybody who you like. And with that, can I ask my colleague, Angel, to please have the slides up? Oh, Cars, thank you. Thank you very much, Cars. So we have here the first 6 months of 2020, and we will cover pretty much the office market, the residential, and the tourism sector. And before I start, I just want to give everyone a snapshot of the last 20 years. So what you see on the slide shows you the last 20 years history of the Philippines. And those lines there show you many metrics: tourism arrivals, foreign direct investments, the stock market index, the remittances, the employment in the BPO sector, cement consumption, and you will notice that it has only gone one way, up. And the text on the upper half of the screen shows you every single bit of bad news that has hit the Philippines, whether it's a volcano or a coup d'etat or a monster storm or some people getting kidnapped or assassination attempts or political usurping efforts, rebel insurgents, you name it. Every single piece of information that has given investors, local and foreign, not to invest in the Philippines. Okay, so every piece of news that has given everybody a reason not to invest in the Philippines, and yet look at our country and how it has performed. Okay, so yes, there is a lot of bad news today. It's probably the biggest piece of bad news we've had in 20 years. But the reality is that we've been living with bad news for a very long time. And despite that, the country continues to prosper and move along. And yes, while today is very hard, it's not as hard as what many other countries are going through. And I will explain that in a while. Next. So I want to go deep into the different property sectors. This slide shows you 3 pie charts. The one on the left shows you the first 6 months of 2019. The one in the middle shows you the first 6 months of 2020. And the same information looked at differently in the one on the right side. So in the first 6 months of 2019, the Philippines consumed about 885,000 square meters of office space. Okay, in the whole of 2019, we consumed 1.7 million square meters of office space. And since COVID hit, the transaction volume has come down by about 70%, 75%, to about 234,000 in the first 6 months of this year. And I'm happy to say that in the 2.5 months that have passed in this quarter, we have added another 60,000 square meters of office space transactions in the Philippines. So that more or less is going to be close to 300,000 square meters year to date, as of today, September 11. Okay, close to 300,000 square meters of net transactions in the Philippines. Okay, and the BPO sector is the single biggest driver of that, followed by the POGO sector. And some people will say, hey, that's 75% down. Shouldn't you be concerned with that? Well, you can look at it that way, that we are 75% down compared to last year, or we can consider the fact that the Philippine office market is probably the only market in the entire world that is still growing today. Okay? And that during the lockdown, during the hard months of March, April, May, and June, the take-up in office space 50% higher in the first quarter. Next is that every other office market in the world has contracted net-wise. The Philippines is the only country in the world where the office sector is still growing. Okay? So you can look at it half full or half empty. And I think we have to be very, very grateful for the POGO sector and the BPO sector, because that is what kept the office market afloat, the investor sentiment afloat, and jobs continue to get created in the Philippines because of these two sectors. And if not for these two sectors, we would be in the ultimate negative in the property sector. Okay? So we have very many things to be thankful for. And the pie chart on the right show you where that demand is. 60% of the demand went to Manila and 40% in the provinces. This is the first time that we have seen provincial demand become this big in proportion to the total country. And three provincial locations stand out. First is Cebu, followed very closely by Iloilo, and third is Clark and the general Pampanga region. So, and I have been, I don't know how many times you've listened to my talks, but I always have promoted Pampanga and Clark in particular. And we are very, very, very excited about Clark and Pampanga. Next. I'm also not blind to the fact that there are so many companies that have contracted in the Philippines. Okay, most of those contractions have happened in Manila. 90,000 square meters, more or less, of office space contracted from January to June of 2020. And almost half of those contractions happened in Quezon City, followed by Makati and Alabang. And if you talk about the industries, 50% of that contraction happened in the POGO sector. But, and then a very small amount in the BPO sector and other sectors. Now, if you look at the POGO sector, that's almost 50,000 square meters of space that's been contracted by the POGO sector. And while that might sound like a lot, the reality is that that is less than 3% of the total footprint of the POGO sector. The POGO sector occupies 1.7, 1.8 million square meters of office space and 2 million square meters of residential space. All over the country, most of that is in Manila. And 50,000 square meter contraction is a very small number. And if you look at the BPO sector, it's proven to be extremely resilient. Only 11,000, 12,000 square meters worth of contractions all over the country. And that is very small. It's a rounding number compared to the 7 to 8 million square meters of office space that the BPO sector occupy. Our business services 9 of the 11 largest tenants in the Philippines. Only 1 of these 9 have contracted. And their contraction has been very marginal, about 1,000 seats, when they have easily 30 to 50,000 seats. So the smallest of these 9 is about 20,000 seats, and the largest of these 9 is about 60 to 70,000 seats. And so a contraction of 1,000 seats is very small. Now, I'm also happy to say that 4 of these 9 are actually expanding now. And how much are they expanding? They're expanding by anywhere from 1,000 seats to 3,000 seats. That's fairly meaningful because they're doing that at possibly the worst time in the global economy in 100 years. Okay? And again, the biggest driver of that is the BPO sector. Next. To my point, how much expansion programs are there all across the country? Well, there's about 482,000 square meters of expansion that want to get signed this year. That is a very exact number. Close to 50% of that is the BPO sector, and that means more jobs for Philippines. The POGO sector, the same thing. Again, that means more jobs for Philippines. And if you look at the right-hand side, 70% of all this expansion is happening in Manila, and the rest in the same places, Cebu, Clark, and Iloilo. Next. So, but we have a bigger pipeline of transactions coming on in the next 4 months of the year. So we have a lot more expansion coming online, and we might close the year at somewhere around 600,000 square meters to 800,000 square meters of space net taken up all over the Philippines. And while some people will say, wow, that is 50% less than last year. Well, okay, but I can tell you that if you talk to any other country, they would gladly be growing at these levels. To put it in perspective, the entire Singapore market and Hong Kong market at their peak only consumed 110, 120,000 square meters a year. We, on a bad year, one of the worst years that's ever hit humanity, we are going to consume 600 to 800,000 square meters. To put it another way, 600 to 8,000 square meters is roughly 1/5 to 1/6 of the entire office sector of Singapore. Okay, so 1/5 to 1/6 of the entire market of Singapore we are consuming in just 1 year. Okay, that is how big, how relevant the Philippine office market is. And in the last 5 years, the Philippine office market has been, and Manila has been the 4th largest consumer of office space in the world every year for the last 5 years. This year, Manila might be the largest office market in the world. Okay, nobody appreciates that. Nobody. Okay, something to be so excited about. Clark. Now, I'm really excited about Clark, mainly because everything is falling into place in Clark and in Pampanga, and frankly, not just Pampanga, but the entire northern Luzon, north of Manila. Okay, I've been trying to do deals in Pampanga for almost 20 years. It was a very hard slog, right? We brought the first, a big chunk of the call centers that are currently in the northern Luzon area were brought in by myself and my colleagues. So we know this market fairly well. The biggest thing that I'm so excited about is the opening of this airport terminal. It will bring the capacity from 4 million to 12 million. It will open up the entire northern Luzon population economy. It will pump prime and speed and hasten the recovery period for Philippines because of the opening of this airport. It will allow traffic to bypass Manila. Okay, just imagine if I wanted to go to LU and I'm from Singapore or Japan or Hong Kong, I have to fly to bloody Manila, and it takes me an hour at best to 3 hours, more or less, to go from airport to Balintawak. And then from Balintawak, once I'm able to pass the toll gate, it will take me 30 minutes to get to Clark, right? It will take me, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours to get to LU, La Union, for surfing. You bypass all that and you save a day, basically. Because if I'm coming from Japan and I want to go to Pangasinan or to La Union, I will save 4 hours, 5 hours of travel time. People from Northern Asia will save 1.5 hours of travel time by landing in Clark. And I've flown in and out of Clark, and I'm so shocked when they say your flight is leaving at 2:10 in the afternoon. It really will leave at 2:10. It's not going to be, oh, it's 2:10 plus maybe 30 minutes plus 2 hours, right? And when they say the plane is going to land at 2:10, it's really going to land at 2:10. So it's a very predictable situation. Second is that for the longest time, the Clark and Pampanga area didn't have the hotels that we have now. You know, we had like 1-star, half-star hotels. And now we have some of the best hotels in the country in Clark, in the Pampanga region. And thanks to Mr. Han and many others who are building more and more quality hotels. And it's just really, really exciting for me. Next is that I think the Pampanga region is going to be like Cebu. What is that? Cebu for the Philippines has been the disaster recovery center or plan B of many companies. As you know, the BPO sector has made the Philippines the back office of global corporate companies. Okay? What that means is that a company like JP Morgan will go and say, we have very big plans for the Philippines. We want to have 20,000 employees in the Philippines. So we will start in Manila with the first 8,000 people. Then we will have a backup plan. An alternative site, just in case something takes Manila down, right? So when you have 8,000 people in Manila, JP Morgan will then open 2,000 to 3,000 seats in Cebu. And after they do that and stabilize that, they will then bring the balance to Manila. So in order for them to grow in Manila, they need Cebu. They need to grow in Cebu and then grow in Manila again. And you know what? JP Morgan is tapped out in Manila, tapped out in Cebu. The next place that they will logically expand to is Clark. Okay? Where you have all the elements that they find in Cebu. A great airport, great hotels, master plan community, and most importantly, a labor market that is now deep and better quality than what it was 15, 20 years ago. And that is going to be what the Pampanga region is going to head towards. It's going to be the next BPO hub for Philippines. Bigger than any other place outside of Manila and Cebu. Cebu built 1.5 million square meters of office space in less than 10 years. And I think that's going to happen to Pampanga. Okay? And Clark will be the gateway for the entire North Luzon. Because it won't just be a gateway for employment for BPOs, and it's not only the second biggest home of POGOs in the country after Manila, but it will also be the gateway for massive tourism. You know what I like about Northern Luzon is that the coastline from Bataan, from Zambales, all the way to Pagudpod, that depth of beach line, the shoreline extends for hundreds of kilometers, reminds me of what Surfer's Paradise looks like in Australia or the Gold Coast, right? That can happen to Northern Luzon with Clark as the gateway for that. And that is really, really, really exciting. And I can share with you more later. Next. Besides the labor market and the fact that Clark is an easy destination for investment, there's a lot of infrastructure supporting it, connecting Clark to the rest of the region, Northern Luzon region. And that is going to be extremely powerful. It will cut travel time through the regions so much more than it is today. And most importantly, it will connect, Clark will get connected with Manila. So much so that Manila will just keep expanding, and Clark and Pampanga region will keep expanding so that they meet somewhere in the middle. Next. And this is just an example of some of the companies that have gone into the Clark Global City of Mr. Dennis Uy. And we expect more and more companies to enter this market. We just helped them do this probably the largest transaction right now in CGC, which is the deal of Megawide, which is very public. And I think there are more companies to come. Next. These are some of the best some of the companies that are located in Clark. And I think one of the things that Clark Global City has done is build quality. So the best office buildings you will find in anything outside Manila, north of Manila, you will find in Clark Global City. And the hotels are not far away. They're also coming. And one thing I'm looking forward to is finally when the rail connecting Tutuban, Manila to Clark is completed, that will be another big plus for the region. Next. We expect more and more blue chip companies to penetrate Clark. Now, this shows you the amount of office space built in the last 35, 40 years on the left, and on the right, the pipeline of office space in each of these regions. If you look at Cebu, Cebu is about 1.2 million square meters of office space today, but they're building another 600, 700,000 square meters, okay? They're increasing the amount of office space that they've built in 35, 40 years. They're going to increase that by 60, 70% in the next 6 years. In the next 6 years. Look at Clark, the second biggest bar there. The size of Clark office space is going to double in just 6 years. And then the rest of Pampanga. And the Clark office space pipeline is understated to my mind, in my view, because we think that more developers, as they acquire more property in the Pampanga region and Clark in particular, will develop office space more aggressively. Next. Capital markets. Now, this is a temperature check for Philippines. This slide shows you in blue land values in Bonifacio for, what is this, 20 years, a little less than 20 years, okay? So we're giving you 20 years of information in this slide. And look at how it's behaved. The green shows you the GDP of the country per year. And even in the global financial crisis, in 2008 and 2009, property prices in Bonifacio remained and held. Okay? The worst of economic conditions globally, and property prices held in Bonifacio. And that pretty much represents property all over the Philippines. It held throughout the Philippines. And why is that? Because of the structural changes that this country has done, plus the fact that we are the BPO center for the world after India. And we think that the same thing is going to happen in this crisis. The global COVID crisis is just going to accelerate job creation in the Philippines. And you see that already with the amount of office space taken up in the first 6 months of this year. And you see that in the pipeline that I walked you through in the next 4 months remaining in this year. We are going to create a whole lot of jobs. You know, if we close 600,000 square meters of office space, that is equivalent to something like 100,000 jobs. 100,000 jobs that will be created, new jobs that will be created in the Philippines because of the BPO sector and the POGO sector working hand in hand to operate here in the Philippines. Next. I just have one slide to say about the residential market, and that is, despite the hardships that we went through in the second quarter during the lockdown, 66 billion worth of reservation sales and condominium sales happened in those months, okay? And what did developers do? They incentivized buyers by giving low down payment schemes, lower interest payments, cheap financing, extended terms, and maybe and offered select buyers lump sum payments, meaning pay me most of the transaction when we deliver the building to you. And voila, because of that, 66 billion got released into the market in terms of sales. So this shows you the amount of money that's actually in the system that's waiting for deals. And I can tell you that so many of my clients are just waiting. They have sitting on so much capital. They're sitting on so much capital, and they are just waiting for good deals to come. Next. Oh, can we go back to that slide? And the single biggest mover in the condominium space in the last 4 or 5 months of the year is SMDC. And they are probably the single biggest condominium developer today. And after that would be Ayala Land and Mega World. Next. Tourism. I am a very big believer of tourism. I think tourism will be bigger than anything we've ever dreamed of. It could be the single biggest contributor of this economy, okay? And I think that will happen in the next 10 years, despite ourselves, okay? Despite all the mistakes we will make between now and year 10, at the end of year 10, despite all the storms and disasters that will come our way, I think tourism will be bigger than remittances. I think it will be bigger than BPO. Not because of a decline in the BPO and remittance markets, but because this sector, the tourism sector, is going to keep growing to the point where it will surpass the BPO sector and the remittances in absolute number, okay? And why is that? Why do I believe that? Because the market outside the Philippines is so big, and the Philippines remains, even today, one of the least visited countries in the world, okay? Please remember that. The Philippines is one of the least visited countries in the world today. And what is our tourism number like? Well, it's like 8 million tourists last year. All-time high, 8 million visitors last year. All-time high. To the point where many locals tell me that, oh my God, the Philippines is being overrun by foreigners. Oh my God, everyone is fighting over the Philippines. You know, US, China, etc., Russian, Koreans, they're all fighting for the Philippines. I have to say that is quite a ridiculous statement. Okay. So I have here 15 countries, 14 countries. Blue shows you the native population of each of these countries. Light blue shows you the foreign residents in these countries, whether they're foreign workers or foreign students or retirees. And red shows you the foreign tourists that enter these countries in a year, okay? On the far left, the most visited country in the world is France, okay? France has got a population base of 84 million. Is that 84? Hold on. Yeah, that is 58 million French people, native French people. And in addition to that, they have about 8 million foreign workers in France, okay? Expats mainly, or students, right? Remember that, 8 million foreign residents in France. And they only have 58 million people, right? How many foreign tourists go to France? 90 million people. That is almost a ratio of 1:2, almost, right? Look at Spain, the second most visited country in the world, right? 40 million native Spaniards, okay? and about 12%, 6 million people, foreign residents. Okay, 6 million foreign residents and 84 million foreign tourists. Think about that. 84 million tourists a year. Okay? That is 1:2, more than 1:2 ratio. 1 local, 2 foreigners. Okay? Look at Hong Kong. Despite everything that Hong Kong has been through, last year, they still had 56 million visitors. And against a population base of 4 million Hong Kong people, right? And 3.5 million foreign residents. 3.5 million foreign residents. 75% or 75% of the population relative to the native population is foreign. And what is the ratio of foreign to local? 1 local for every 12 foreigners visiting Hong Kong in a year. And if you look at Thailand, you know what Thailand's trying to figure out? They have been stuck at 40 million visitors a year. 35 to 40 million for the last 5-8 years. And you know what? They have been trying to figure out how to break that ceiling. Why can't they surpass 40 million visitors, right? And look at the native population of Thailand. That's about 69 million people. 69 million people and 40 million tourists, right? And then at the very far end of the screen is the tropical islands of the Philippines. 110 million people, less than 1 million foreign workers. Let's say it's understated because of pastillas, and I suppose you know what that is. Let's say it's 2 million. The number is 2 million actual foreigners working here because they're all in hiding or whatever, right? And look at the foreign tourists, 8 million. It's nothing compared to the region, other countries. If you get the last 30, 40 countries in Asia Pacific, we are number 15 or 14. Most visited country in Asia Pacific. It's nothing. We are so far. We are one of the least visited countries in the world. And we have to figure a way to be more open to foreigners and foreign tourists, not just to a particular set of tourists, right? Not just to Western visitors, but we have to be open to everybody if we want the country to prosper and pull so many millions of people out of poverty, right? And as they say, beggars cannot be choosers, and we are one of the biggest beggars up to now, especially in the tourism sector. And that's why you can look at this and despair, or you can look at this and be excited at the tremendous potential of tourism. It is there. We just have to pluck it off the tree. We don't have to plant the tree. The tree is there. It's fruit bearing, and we just have to figure out a way to pluck it out. Okay? As businessmen, you all know that it's so much easier to build a business when a market is there. It is very hard to build a business when the market is unknown. Here, the tourism market is very well known. Next. I am a big believer of Chinese tourism. Not because I look Chinese, okay? Just for the record, I cannot speak Chinese, to the disappointment of everyone in my clan, to the years of ridicule that I had to go through, growing up in a Chinese family and not knowing the language. So I'm what you call a banana. I'm yellow outside, but I'm actually white inside. And I say this because China is the biggest tourism market in the world. Consider this. In year 2000, China had 4 million tourists from China that traveled outside of China. 4 million, with a population base at that time, year 2000, maybe there were 900 million, maybe there were 1 billion, right? In year 2000, 20 years ago. Today, 20 years after, China produces 150 million tourists. And it's feeding the entire world. The entire tourism market is entirely dependent on China. And in the next 10 years, this 150 million tourists from China is expected to double, 300 million. Okay? Only 10% of the Chinese population have passports today. That is expected to double in the next 10 years. Okay? So let's say you don't like China, because some people don't like China, right? Okay, fine. Let's just ask ourselves, how many people from Asia Pacific, 3 to 4 hours away by flight, how many Asia Pacific tourists come to Philippines? Well, very, very little. Very few Vietnamese, very few Thais, very few Malaysians, very few Hong Kongese, very few Australians, very few Thais, etc., 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 etc. I keep going down this list. Frankly, we have an underappreciation of our neighbors, and we have to fix that because they are so close to us. They are our natural market. Here's another statistic. Only 20% of tourists will travel out of their continent. So, of the Europeans, only 20% will travel out of Europe. The Americans and the Americas, so including Latin America and North America, only 20% of that will cross the Atlantic or the Pacific, right? Here we are, 80% market across a population base, the largest population base accessed in the world. What is that? 3 billion people, 4 billion people in Asia Pacific, 3 to 4 billion people accessible within a 3 to 4 hour flight. And we have to ask ourselves, how much traffic is coming from our neighbors? Very, very little. Next. I am really excited because this map is a drawing, okay? It's a drawing of infrastructure projects. So there are 11 projects, infrastructure projects, that will be completed in the next 12 months. The simplest way I can explain this to you is that maybe almost every month there will be one infrastructure project completed every month for the next 12 months. Some are bridges that are very short, some are trains that are badly needed, and some are road projects, right? And it will connect Cavite, Laguna, Manila, and Clark, and Pampanga, right? What is the population base of this very small geography from Pampanga to Cavite, Laguna? That is roughly 30 to 35 million people, okay? But what does that population base represent? It represents close to 60% of the GDP of the country. What is the impact of these 11 projects? Well, I think it will cut traffic by half. You might not appreciate this, but the typical employee, worker in Manila, living in Manila, working in Manila, is spending 6 hours a day, every day commuting. The time they leave the house, ride the tricycle, ride the jeep, ride the bus, ride the FX, ride whatever. Door to the office, 3 hours. Going back, 3 hours, minimum. That is one workday. Now imagine if 30 million people were given back 3 more hours a day, every day, that they didn't have before. The economic productivity per capita is going to explode. It's going to break the ceiling because people will become more productive. Simple. Instead of having 4 meetings a day, you will be able to have 6 meetings a day, 7 meetings a day. And that will have tremendous impact on productivity. People will have more time to educate themselves. People will have more time with their loved ones. People will have more time with their children, with their spouse, with their partner, etc., etc., etc. It will be fantastic. And you know what? We're going to experience all this post-lockdown. Because once we are lifted from this lockdown, we will be shocked at how easy it is now to go from one place to another. Because in the last 6 months, in the next 4, 5, 6 months, we're going to be holed up in our houses, not knowing what the hell is going on outside our homes. And all of a sudden, wow, this tollway just opened. This new bridge just opened. This train is finally upgraded or expanded or operational. What I used to see and drive by as a construction site is now operational. That's what's going to happen to us when we get out of this lockdown. And it's going to be a literally breath of fresh air, because we will get out of this lockdown knowing a new Manila, a new Philippines. Because like I said, it's not just about Manila, it's about Cavite, Laguna, and Bulacan, and Pampanga. Next. And that's what's going to drive tourism. One last point is the REIT market. I'm very excited about the REIT market. Yes, the Ayala REIT is discounted by 10% more or less from IPO price, but I'm hoping that will be a temporary setback. I think when the markets are back up, the Ayala REIT will do really well. And as they add more and more assets and expand that REIT, that share price will keep climbing. And right now, people don't appreciate the dividends, but when the dividends start flowing in, they're going to see the power of what it means to have a REIT. And just imagine this. We have something like 15 million square meters of office space built today all over the country, and another 15 million square meters of mall space. You put that together, that's roughly 30 million square meters of office and mall space combined. Okay? Of this 30 million square meters, 15 companies own 70+% of all this stock. And that means that each of these companies can REIT at a scalable way. They have diversity in tenant profile, diversity in geography, diversity in asset class. And it's not just office and mall space. You can REIT hospitals, you can REIT infrastructure projects, you can REIT hotels. And the REIT will allow hotel developers more capital to develop more hotels at a time when the Philippines is going to boom in tourism. Okay? Clark has got a direct flight to El Nido. How many hotel rooms are there in El Nido? Very few. How many are there in Bohol? Very few, right? For the comparing it to the market that it could service. And that's just one example of many, many things that cheap money will bring to Philippines. Next. As my last slide, I want to remind people of how great we are situated. Yes, times are very hard. 30% unemployment is like 30 million unemployed. I forget the number right now. It escapes me. But fundamentally, there's been so many great things that have happened in the Philippines. So many great things that people do not appreciate. We really have to thank the Department of Finance and Secretary Dominguez for everything that they have done for Philippines. Because if not for the fiscal management of the DOF and the Central Bank and the PSE and the SEC and NADA, that entire cluster, we would be a total mess. Just imagine that pre-COVID, we were one of the least borrowed countries in the world. Okay? meaning we have some of the lowest debt levels in the world as a country. Can you imagine that? Nobody ever thought that that was possible. And even with the rapid amount of borrowing we have done during this COVID crisis because we needed to, we still are one of the least debted countries in the world. Number two, assuming our beloved senators and congressmen work so hard to pass the Bayanihan Act or create bill or this new tax reform bill, it will bring corporate income tax down from 30% to 25% within this year, with the view of bringing it down to 20% in the next 3 to 5 years, right? At 25%, it's already one of the lowest tax regimes in Asia Pacific. At 20%, we will be just higher by a bit compared to Hong Kong and Singapore, okay? We will be one of the lowest tax regimes in the world at 20%. Can you imagine that? Number two, there's so much liquidity in the market. Number three, why? Because the central bank has moved the reserve requirement down in the banks from 18% in a year ago to, what is it now, 14%, with a view of bringing it down to 8% by 2022. That's going to release the equivalent of $150 billion, or roughly 50% of the economy, in cash into the system. Consider this. Recently, the Philippine government was able to borrow 10-year money and 25-year money at below 2.5%. The spread between 10-year and 25-year money used to be very big, and today it's a fraction of 1%. Can you imagine that, right? 25-year money, you know what that means? That means that finally a mortgage market for the Philippines will emerge. That will allow banks to offer borrowers, home borrowers, with 20-year fixed rates at reasonable rates. Can you imagine Tokyo with 1-2% a year for 30 years fixed for your home? Can you imagine the US at 2-3%? You can borrow 30-year money in the US at 2 or 3%, and that will happen here. Maybe not the 2 or 3%, but maybe it's 6%, 7%, 8% fixed for 30 years. That's never happened. Just consider 15 years ago, borrowing rates were at 12%, 10%, 8%. It's crazy. And so interest rates are going to continue to fall. And when we get out of this COVID crisis, interest rates, lending rates from the banks will fall. Because right now the T-bills are very low and the banks are keeping the rates high because of the factoring in the risk of the COVID crisis. But when the COVID crisis is gone, that's going to adjust closer to T-bill rates. And that is going to benefit the real estate market tremendously. And it's not just the real estate market, but so many companies and sectors. And so the big question that everyone's asking is, when is this going to be done? When is this COVID crisis going to be done? Well, there are 200 companies that are looking for this vaccine all over the world. 1 or 5 or 10 of those companies will get it right. There is an incredible amount of information sharing, money, resources, computing power that's being dedicated to look for this vaccine. It will be found. We have to believe in humanity, and it's there. And and I think it will be out in the next 4 to 6 months, right? There are 4 or 5 companies that will be releasing their vaccine by end of this year. And when those things happen in the West, I think it will hit the Philippines in February, March, or April, sometime there. So if you believe that, and it's not me saying it, this is what I've been reading from all over the place, summarizing to you. If you believe that the vaccine will be found in the next 4 to 6 months, then the next 4 to 6 months is the time to be invested. The time to be invested. Just imagine, so many stocks around the world are at an all-time low. except for what's happening in the Nasdaq and the U.S. But most stock markets in the world are crushed. They're still very near all-time lows. Philippines, so many blue chip stocks that are heavily discounted unreasonably. And property prices will continue to climb after this COVID crisis. The next thing I will ask you is, if you believe that the per capita income will double in the Philippines in the next 10 to 15 years, then this is the time to be invested in the Philippines, right? Because from what we have done in the last 20 years, we have seen per capita income go from 1,500 to today 3,100, 3,200. In all likelihood, in the next 10, 15 years, it will be $5,000 or $6,000 per capita. Now, if you believe that's possible, just like what's happened in the last 20 years, then it will only mean one thing: property prices will keep climbing, and demand for goods and services will keep climbing in the Philippines, which is why so many financial institutions, government institutions, have a consensus that the Philippines is going to be one of the top 20 to 30 fastest growing economies in the next 30 years. Consider that. And with that, this is my last slide, and thank you very much for having me. I hope that it's been useful for everyone here. Thank you.
Those were very exciting news and enlightening and very reassuring to know that despite what is happening today because of this pandemic, this is actually happening in the world, you know? And we can still see some silver linings showing through the COVID-19 cloud, as we call it. Okay, Sir David, we have received some questions here, so maybe you could answer them. Okay. First one is, this is related to buying a condo unit daw. As at this time, since a lot of offerings are being advertised, is it advisable ba to buy one at this time?
Yes, because now is the time when developers are giving very good terms to pre-selling projects. Now, I would always encourage people to do three things. Okay, first is invest meaningfully in the stock market. Second is to buy assets that will generate recurring income. And third, buy assets that are for the long haul, which means it will have some kind of land banking effort. So you buy, let's say, property in the provinces, like let's say Tarlac, for example, right? You buy property in Tarlac, you hold it for 10 years, it appreciates. You can do that, but I would look at land banking and low yielding assets as the last priority. You have to prioritize stock market investments, then cash yielding investments, and then land banking. So yes, buying a condominium would be a good time, but you have to consider these three things. Where are you in these three things?
I think this is related po, no? Pero at this time, it's buying realty estates. Kasi the first one is for condo units. But this one, sabi niya, do you recommend buying realty estates? Kasi is there a month or a time na you believe people should look into buying this? Kasi this is different from a condo unit versus a property or a land property itself.
Yeah, land. Yeah, I would leave land banking as the last, unless you're a developer, right? But if you're an investor, then I think your priority will be to build income generating assets. So office space, condominium space, mall space, hotels. I think those are the better priorities. And then you go land banking. Why? Because when you're able to generate recurring income assets, it will allow you to borrow money safely, right? So, what do most people do? They have a business or they have a job, right? And then the income that they generate from that business or job is what they use to buy the real estate. And if they need to borrow money, their job or business is what funds that debt servicing. But what happens if you lose your job? What happens if your business doesn't do as well? Then that's where a lot of people get into trouble. So if you had a job and a business, better for you to purchase something that is cash generating, so that will be another leg of income, and then that will allow you to buy passive property, non-income generating property, land banking for the future. Look at Cavite, for example. You could have bought Cavite land for 50 pesos per square meter 10 years ago, and today they're worth 5,000 pesos. If you're able to ride out that long term, that would be great. But many people end up getting into trouble because in the first crisis that hits, they're not able to service the debt, or they have to be a distressed seller. But if you had an income generating asset, that can fund your project, and you can borrow at a much safer way.
Follow up on that. You mentioned a while ago that prices for land will keep climbing in the following years, post-COVID. Pero right now, what we have are lower, lower interest rates and longer fixed rates for longer periods. So this situation, or the stand of this interest now, hanggang kailan po ba natin makikita sila na this will be giving us longer fixed rates for longer periods, so that people would know when to decide on doing such buying?
I think interest rates and longer term debt will become better and better for Filipinos, right? But we have to be careful because that will feed into property speculation. So because the more money you have, the more your tendency is to speculate in real estate, and then you create a bubble, etc., etc., etc. But I think if we are prudent, we don't borrow too much, and I always say, please don't borrow too much money. So if we're able to borrow safely, I think the conditions for Philippines will just keep improving. So I don't know if there really is a rush to buy into property now, although now is a very good time. It really depends on your financial situation. Yeah, it certainly is a very good time to buy now, real estate, of any class.
All right. Another question. It says, I am a commercial property owner of rented spaces in my buildings. Since the pandemic, our tenants has been cut more than 80% because owners are now going online and home-based business. What is the outlook for us property owners? Is there something we can look forward to?
Yeah. So globally, online retail is less than 10% of all transactions. So the brick and mortar businesses are still there's still a market for them, right? Now, you read all the things that have happened in the US. The reality is that the US is overmalled, and the consumption is out of control. Like, why do people need 10 pairs of jeans? Why do they need 300 pairs of shoes? I don't know, but there's overconsumption that drove, because of cheap money, that drove consumption, that drove the malls. And with the hardships now, all that got wiped out. Online is a factor, but it is not the only factor. The reality is that from day one, they were overmalled. In the Philippines, nothing will take the experience away, okay? people who buy bags, people who buy bags love to touch the bag, love to touch the shoe. And that's the experience that right now is being deprived of people. And so I think for as long as we're able to go to the mall safely, we will be back there. Now, we have been over malling, meaning we have been building too many malls because the incomes have not risen as fast as the building of office of mall space and the building of more retail shops. But I think there will be a balance there somewhere.
So we should always have a balance in everything we do, in moderation, ika nga, no? So that's a good point to take on too. So another question is, what are your thoughts on data on industrial space and warehouses? Seems like this market's lease value has also increased.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing to do logistics and industrial right now. However, the only ones that are paying rent in the industrial sector would be the ones in online retail because they're the big thing now, and food, and only certain companies in food business because not everyone in food is doing well. And then yeah, but most of the tenants are getting hammered right now. The other thing to caution you with the warehouse logistics market is that it is easily flooded. So many developers are entering that segment of the market, and I think there will be way too much warehouse spaces in the market. So that's just the watching the supply demand is very, very important.
Let's go now to the POGO sector. Sabi nyo kanina, the POGO and the BPO market are the drivers ngayon sa ating economy. And may question dito si Ian Chongson. Sabi niya, what will be the economic effect if our government will ban POGOs in our country?
Well, the reality is that the POGO sector is one of the biggest investors in this country. They occupy 1.7 million square meters of office space, 2 million square meters of residential space. They're the single biggest buyer in the mall. The single biggest buyer in the mall. They are a very big chunk of the logistics, the supply chain, you name it. Tourism, they're the single biggest driver of tourism in the Philippines today. If you take them out, it's going to hurt us. Fortunately for the Philippines, the POGO sector cannot leave all in one go immediately because Malaysia is courting them like crazy. Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos. The great thing about us, the lucky thing about us is that even if they wanted to go to these countries and exit the Philippines, there's not enough office space in these countries. There's not enough residential accommodation in these countries for the POGO sector to just pack up and go at one time. So if they leave, they will leave in phases. They will probably do so like 30% at a time per year. So I think if they made a conscious collective effort to leave, they will be able to empty out of the Philippines in about 4 or possibly 5 years. Okay? Probably very difficult to do that in one go. Now, the malls, yeah. So I think we have to have a better appreciation of the POGO sector. Now, the government says that they're not paying their taxes. The POGO sector says the rules of the tax laws changed midstream. You know, because it was under PAGCOR, now BIR is getting involved, and they've been trying to get involved for the last 18 months, but it didn't start out that way. And so the POGO sector feel that the rules were changed on them halfway in the game. And that's what's really, really upsetting them. But I think there will be a compromise eventually. I just hope we do that compromise sooner rather than later, because it's going to hurt many people if they disappeared at this time, most especially when we need the most number of jobs, investment, and velocity in the economy as we do today.
To a socio-economic planner, they say it's going to be 2.2 trillion pesos of losses for the country because of this pandemic. But aside from the POGO and the BPO, sir, what are the other good prospective tenants for leasing companies that you can recommend? A question from Francisco Lapus.
I think, sir, that these are the only two sectors that have the scale. Yes, we can have insurance companies, for example, are growing in the Philippines, but they're not going to add the amount of headcount that can come anywhere close to the BPO sector or the POGO sector. Just imagine that the POGO sector occupied only 200,000 square meters in year 2016. Today, 1.7 million. It's been an incredible economic driver for Philippines. Now, will any other industry do that? Hard to say. Very, very hard. It'll take years. We were so lucky with this industry that it discovered the Philippines, took advantage of it so quickly, and yeah. So other industries will take time.
Okay, last two questions, sir. What is the single biggest factor that will turn your vision into reality? From Gregoria Simbulan.
I don't know. I'm just basing everything that I say on everything that I see and read, and the people who I talk to in the boardroom and out of the boardroom. We handle many industries, many accounts, many companies, all sorts of nationalities, and I've tried to. I guess it's happening. We want it to happen at a faster pace. The reality is that the Philippines lost 30 years from 70s to 92. We lost those years, and then we lost the years from 1998 to 2004. And we cannot undo that just in two presidential administrations. It will take, we have to be realistic in doing more. Number two, I just wish that everyone paid their taxes. The tax efficiency, collection efficiency of the Philippines is less than 18% today. It's a lot better than 12% 2 administrations ago, but it's only 18%. We have a long way to go.
Okay, and lastly, for the question would be for Pampanga. You said there's going to be exciting development for Pampanga since it's going to be like a center of development or property development in the country in the next, say, how many years? And that is to, parang nakaline siya with Iloilo, Cebu. It's on the top 3. So these projects that, and these prospects that we are seeing, how can, are we still seeing that may mahihinto pa ito because of the, other factors, or will this still go on even other crises will, if we experience other crises also?
Yeah, I think if we look at the first slide that I presented, the very first one that I showed you, you will see there that despite all the problems we've been through, the country kept growing. And I think Clark has all the elements it needs for success. Once that airport opens, it will change everything, not overnight, but a lot quicker than if it wasn't there. And then when the rail connects from Manila to Clark, that will be another big factor. So Clark will really be a big gateway for the Philippines, for foreign traffic to flow into the country. And if you combine that with the power of Subic, with the power of PowerPoint, with the power of Baguio and Ilocos and other parts of Luzon, that will be an awesome economic force. It will have momentum. It will have momentum that will manage through crises more comfortably than not.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. David Leechiu. That was a very interesting discussion on what can we expect in terms of property outlook for the Philippines in the coming years, post-COVID-19 perspective. All right. As much as we would like to ask the questions that were sent in by our members, we don't have enough time. But the Secretariat will collect all your questions, and they will be handing them over to Mr. Leechiu's assistant so they can answer them, and you can send them back their reply to you. So thank you for sending all your questions, sir. We would like to thank our guest speaker for today's EGMM, Mr. David Leechiu, the Chief Executive Officer of Leechiu Property Consultants. We are very fortunate to have you with us, sir. And yes, there is definitely a silver lining in the COVID-19 cloud. And to show our appreciation, we would like to award you this e-certificate of appreciation. We wish you more blessings and keep safe.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
All right, it is now 4:27, and just inform me po, kanina 3:30 we officially closed the e-voting for the new sets of Board of Directors for PAMCHAM's 2021-2022 term. And in a short while, we will be hearing the results of the poll. But while we are having the ballots tabulated and the results being validated by the COMELEC 2020 chairperson headed by Mr. Romy Torno from Romeo G. Torno and Company CPAs. So we will be giving you a short intermission so as to lighten the mood a bit. And we will see you later for the announcement of winners, or the new sets of officers rather.
Lift your head, baby, don't be scared of the things that could go wrong along the way. You get by with a smile. You can't win at anything, but you can try. Baby, you don't have to worry, 'cause there ain't no need to hurry. No one ever said that there's an easy way. And they're closing all the doors, and they don't want you anymore. And this sounds funny, but I'll say it anyway. Babe, I'll stay through the bad times, even if I had to catch you every day. We'll get by with a smile. You can never be too happy in this life. In a world where everybody hates a happy ending story, it's a wonder love can make the world go round. But let it bring you down and turn your face into a frown. You'll get along with a little prayer and a song. Turn your face into a frown. You'll get along with a little prayer and a song. Lift your head.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for our participants. Okay, let's now turn it over to Mr. Torno for the official results. Sir?
Good afternoon. So I have the listing of our winners in this today election. Out of 22 candidates, there will be 15 candidates who will be sitting for the board for the year 2021 and 2022. I will read the names in alphabetical order. So the first in my list is Kalingo Marie. Then Carlos Teresa D. Garbes Malu B. Garcia Prudencio S. Hizon Marco O. Jimenez Marco Antonio. Laus Dior A. Lo Robert H. Ma Bong D. Mangyo Nestor S. Nikdao Jesus S. Pamandanan Jose P. Romero Renato G. Tan Willie M. Tolentino Marilu Ramos. Those are our new board of directors, and congratulations to all of you. In behalf of my colleagues in the PAMCHAM, the members, I would like to thank them for their support. And also, of course, for the team auditors of Romeo G. Torno and Company CPAs who help us also in this process. As what was mentioned earlier, this is the first time we did the online voting. Napakahirap ng first time. There's hindi laging perfect ang first time. And thank you to all. Goodbye.
Thank you very much po, Mr. Torno. Sabi nga, this is unprecedented kasi this is the first time that they did the e-voting for the set of board of directors. And just to let you know po, among the 15 board of directors, they will be choosing who among them will be the next chamber president and the next chairman. So we're looking forward to that. I believe that would be in December, right, ma'am? Okay, so special thanks to the GMM Working Committee headed by our Executive Director, Ma'am Joyce Del Rosario, our Secretariat, Ms. Kleina, Ms. Len, Sir Randy, our technical team, Sirs Red, Irvin, and Bird, and our Membership Committee led by MEMCOM Chair, Ma'am Noy Lacanilao. Thank you, guys. And always remember, PAMCHAM will be having learning sessions this month for the Education Committee and the Kapihan of the MEMCOM in October, so watch out for that. Till the next virtual events, keep safe everyone, and always remember, every cloud has a silver lining, so stay positive. This has been your host, Lani Ontong Esguerra. I am PAMCHAM.
The Philippines, the gateway to Asian and Western markets, is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. While the country progresses, Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation continues to transform landscapes into dynamic urban centers in the country.
So back in 1990, a vast sugarcane field was converted or evolved into a world-class industrial zone. This is Laguna Technopark. Laguna Technopark is one of the first privately owned industrial parks in the Philippines. Now, after 3 decades, it is now the home of over 270 locators. These are foreign companies and domestic companies. We are very proud to say that the Laguna Technopark is an integral part in the economic boom or progress of the Calabar Zone region.
Now, all HC has set their sights in other regions, continuously expanding in the emerging areas of the country.
We will also have another development in Pampanga. Aside from our Alviera Industrial Park in the municipality of Porac, we will now develop Pampanga Technopark in Mabalacat City. Just a few minutes away from the Clark International Airport, this 192-hectare development is highly accessible by expressways and national highways.
It's been almost 3 decades since the first industrial park of Ayala Land Logistics has been built, and since then, it wasn't just businesses that prospered. More than 100,000 employees have been employed, and export revenues have reached more than $7 billion. As All HC continues to pioneer and break ground, it transforms landscapes into hubs for industrial and logistics convergence. When it comes to business, only the best will suffice. Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation, a prime choice for limitless business opportunities. The Philippines, the gateway to Asian and Western markets, is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. While the country progresses, Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation continues to transform landscapes into dynamic urban centers in the country.
So back in 1990, a vast sugarcane field was converted or evolved into a world-class industrial zone. This is Laguna Technopark. Laguna Technopark is one of the first privately owned industrial parks in the Philippines. Now, after 3 decades, it is now the home of over 270 locators. These are foreign companies and domestic companies. We are very proud to say that the Laguna Technopark is an integral part in the economic boom or progress of the Calabar Zone region.
Now, All HC has set their sights in other regions, continuously expanding in the emerging areas of the country.
We will also have another development in Pampanga. Aside from our Alviera Industrial Park in the municipality of Porac, we will now develop Pampanga Technopark in Mabalacat City. Just a few minutes away from the Clark International Airport, this 192-hectare development is highly accessible by expressways and national highways.
It's been almost 3 decades since the first industrial park of Ayala Land Logistics has been built, and since then, it wasn't just businesses that prospered. More than 100,000 employees have been employed, and export revenues have reached more than $7 billion. As All HC continues to pioneer and break ground, it transforms landscapes into hubs for industrial and logistics convergence. When it comes to business, only the best will suffice. Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation, a prime choice for limitless business opportunities. The Philippines, the gateway to Asian and Western markets, is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. While the country progresses, Ayala Land Logistics Holdings Corporation continues to transform landscapes into dynamic urban centers in the country.
So back in 1990, a vast sugarcane field was converted or evolved into a world-class industrial zone. This is Laguna Technopark. Laguna Technopark is one of the first privately owned industrial parks in the Philippines. Now,
latest gadgets or maybe world-class furniture. Ano man ang hanap mo, mga pang-home man o office solutions, we've got you covered only here at First Mega Saver. Dito sa First Mega Saver, just tell us your budget so we can give you the best deals tailored to your needs. No worries na rin sa payment dahil First Mega Saver offers both cash and credit card installments. And with many branches across Luzon, tara na dito sa First Mega Saver. Hindi lang basta saver, dapat Mega Saver.
In a fast-paced world where you can get left behind in just a blink of an eye, it's so tempting to just drop everything and stop. Here's for the ones who don't, the ones who keep going. We at Hino Motors Philippines have been with you every step of the way.